Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good evening. Hi, Dolores. Hi, Cheyenne. Uh, You're very welcome, Cheyenne. I'll be doing it again from time to time. Steve DeVore, how are you tonight? And Cheyenne hopes I had a happy birthday. I did. I had a very happy birthday. Thank you, Cheyenne. And Sam Hollenbeck has joined. Hi, Sam. Nice to see you. Okay, so let's get to it. I'm sure you all know by now that there's been a turn towards Bernie Sanders in the polls. He is now he is first, okay, in Iowa. He is first in the New Hampshire primary. Joe Biden looks like he has lost considerably in the polls. Also, Bernie is closer in South Carolina, though Biden still has a big lead in South Carolina. Okay, in the Nevada primary, uh, it looks like even though Biden still has a small lead in that particular primary, okay, it looks like Bernie is within a couple of points, and Biden has lost a lot of ground in in the polling. I shouldn't say primary because actually Nevada is a caucus state, and by the way, Sanders does very well in caucus states, okay, because of the nature of his support and the intensity of that support and the willingness of his people to get out and to go to a caucus. So since he's within 2 points of Biden, okay, in terms of the Nevada polling, it's very likely he's close enough now to actually win the caucuses. Same is true, okay, of Iowa. He's ahead in the polling, okay, in Iowa, which means will probably come out considerably more ahead in the caucuses because his caucus people in Iowa are very, very strong. His in-state campaigners there, okay, very, very strong. I personally think that he's got a lock on the New Hampshire primary as well. Also, Bernie is leading in the polling in the California primary. He's now clearly leading in the California polling. And so it looks very good for him on Super Tuesday because, of course, California has something like 416 votes that are up for grabs, okay, in California. So Bernie will have a big leg up on Super Tuesday, okay, as well. So now that the polls are turning towards him, not only do we have a situation where the Democratic Party is likely to increasingly unload on Bernie, as they have been doing, okay, in recent days to some degree, and where the mass media, of course, will continue to be very negative, okay, about him. Hi, Randy. Hi, Russ. How are you? I had a birthday a couple of days ago on Wednesday. I really enjoyed it. It was really a nice birthday. That's why I'm on here tonight because I did not come on on Wednesday. Kay has joined. Jim Bird has joined. Hi, everybody. So, uh, okay, where was I? Okay, so the press is likely to be increasingly snide when it comes to Bernie. They'll probably try to pull him down as much as they can in terms of what happens in the debate, which is now scheduled, I think, for it's either the 13th or the 14th. I forget again which date it is, but it's coming up fast. It's next week now. I think it's probably going to be on Tuesday night, so that's the 14th. Okay, so That's going to be a debate with, I think, only six candidates in it. I think the only six are going to be Joe Biden and Bernie, okay, and Buttigieg, and Warren, and Amy Klobuchar, and I think Tom Steyer. I think those are going to be the only six participants in that particular debate. Cheyenne says, "Are you 49 again, Dr. Joe?" No, I'm neither 49 nor 39. I am 81, folks. I'm 81, and I'm proud to be 81. No problem at all. So, well, that's okay, Kate. Don't worry about it. It's okay. I mean, everybody helps as and when they can, and that's the way it has to be. Not asking for anything special. So, anyway, uh, so they're going to be nasty to Bernie. But guess who else is going to be nasty to Bernie? It looks like the president has now deigned to begin to unload on crazy Bernie. He's calling him crazy Bernie again. And he's beginning to attack him on the Iran issue, okay, and in relation to his decision to assassinate Soleimani. Okay, Bernie, of course, is stating in no uncertain terms that was the wrong decision, and so Trump has been attacking him, but suggesting that he's a tool of the Ayatollahs. It's Ayatollah speak. And he's also attacking Bernie for being an elitist, for being a millionaire elitist. Well, I think Bernie, okay, is. I think this is actually very good news for Bernie, because I think that when Bernie begins to hit back at Trump, he can take the gloves off and he can show how capable he is of going back, okay, at Trump. On the foreign policy issues of Iran, he should be able to easily demolish Trump with one-liners. I don't think he's going to have any problem, okay, on that. And as far as the elitism charge is concerned, I mean, all you have to do is bring up Donald Trump's golden toilets, for God's sake. How can he accuse anybody else of being an elitist? He probably cried for days when he found out he wouldn't be able to take his golden toilets to the White House. Hell, how can Donald Trump complain about golden toilets? There was a time not too many years ago when he was unwilling to shake hands with people because he was afraid he was going to get germs. That's how much of an elitist he was. He was afraid of the germs. Donald Trump accusing somebody else of being an elitist. Now, maybe that'll work with some of the Republicans that he ran against in 2016, and maybe it works, okay, with Hillary Clinton. But with the boy from Brooklyn that had an allowance of 25 cents a week when he was growing up, it ain't going to work. It ain't going to stick. And Bernie's still from Brooklyn, and Donald Trump is not. And if Trump wants to take off the kid gloves, and he wants to get down in the gutter, don't worry about Bernie. He can give as good as he gets and better, especially against a cowardly bully like Donald Trump. That's not going to be any problem at all for Bernie. Not only is it not going to be any problem for Bernie, it's a wonderful development for Bernie. It's a wonderful development for Bernie because as Bernie replies to Donald Trump and he shows how he would handle Donald Trump in the campaign, the electability factor for Joe Biden, insofar as it continues to exist at all, will rapidly go out of existence because people will see that Bernie can blast Trump on the campaign trail in tremendously effective ways, continuously, and just knock the hell out of Trump. He's the perfect antidote for Trump. So the sooner Trump begins to attack him, the better off Bernie will be on the electability question. Nor will Bernie allow Trump to distract from the issues. And Bernie will take a certain amount of time to tweak Trump in various ways that will make him really, really mad and get his goat. But at the same time, what Bernie will do is to track back to the issues. Track back to the issues. He'll continually bring Trump back to the issues. He'll continually bring Trump back to his promises about no wars. He'll continually go after Bernie. And also, don't worry about Bernie with the turn towards impeachment games in Washington. And the reason why you don't have to worry about that is because it will be possible for Bernie to turn the impeachment of the narratives that come out in the impeachment process to his advantage, because Bernie has enough of a sociological imagination to turn those issues into the larger policy issues of the campaign. Kay says, I have my doubts if Trump will even participate in any debates. I think Trump will try to avoid those debates, but of course, it's going to depend on what the polls say. If Bernie jumps off to a big lead against Trump at the start, and Trump is somewhere down in the 30s, then Trump is going to have to debate. He's going to have to debate. It depends on the course of the campaign. Of course, at the beginning, he's not going to debate. He's just going to hold his rallies. But Bernie will watch for the issues in the rallies, and pretty soon he will be able to reply very, very effectively. And by the way, we've been worried about what might happen if there's a trial in the Senate next week, okay, or the week after, and Bernie is stuck in the Senate and cannot go to Iowa for the last 2 to 3 weeks of the campaign. But guess what? Even with the impeachment trial going on and Bernie in the middle of the impeachment trial, Bernie will still be able to make statements and hold events when the Senate is not in session, which can be brought in by TV to various events in Iowa at that particular time. And he'll be able to talk to the issues in that way during the time when he can't be in Iowa, and he will have his surrogates introducing him, he'll just make his statements, from Washington. They will still be very meaningful. And if Trump attacks him during this time, while the impeachment is going on, we should welcome it, because Bernie can reply to Trump in these meetings. And he can just talk to the issues over the internet. He can talk to the attacks over the internet. And he can do it in these town hall meetings in Iowa, that occur. When people begin to see this, and they begin to see how he's spending his days in the Senate, and he's spending his free time working with them, talking to the people of Iowa, and talking to New Hampshire people, and making speeches to South Carolina voters, he will get even more popular. I don't really think we're going to have to worry about that. That might hurt some of the other candidates. I mean, it might hurt Amy Klobuchar. It might be a problem for Warren. But that's not going to be a big problem for Bernie. I'll bet he already has plans for it. His team is probably preparing for it. And I don't think it's going to hurt him at all. I think that he's got Iowa. His momentum will not be stopped now by an impeachment trial in the Senate. But now, let's get to the impeachment trial and the impeachment games that people are talking about. First of all, there was some really crazy news today from the Senate. Mitch McConnell backed a resolution to change the Senate rules and dismiss the Trump impeachment articles before they are even sent. Well, what Mitch did on Thursday was to sign on to a constitutionally dubious GOP resolution that would alter Senate rules to dismiss the articles of impeachment against Donald Trump before the House even sends them to the Senate. The measure was sponsored by Senator Hawley, who is a Missouri Republican, and backed by 12 other Republicans, and would change more than 24 Senate rules in order to dismiss the articles of impeachment if they are not sent to the Senate within 25 days from the date of adoption of such articles. Now catch this. Where in the Constitution does it say that the House has to deliver the impeachment articles within 25 calendar days from the date of adoption of such articles? Answer to that question: it doesn't. There will be no constraint on Nancy Pelosi to meet any 25 calendar day constraint. It's crazy. Anyway, the House approved the 2 articles of impeachment on December 12th of 2019, which supposedly means, they think it means, that the Senator Hawley measure would require the House to send the articles to the Senate by January 12th. So this, of course, is absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy, because it assumes that the 25 calendar days would start from the adoption of the articles, even though the 25 calendar day rule was not in effect from then, which makes the whole thing even more questionable. Anyway, Chuck Schumer, of course, objected, and he accused Mitch of trying to change the rules of the Senate to cover up for Donald Trump, and said no one should be surprised. No one should be surprised that Chuck Schumer made this lame response, that he made this particular lame response. That was perfectly predictable because the man has the imagination of an ant, an absolute ant. So Axios reported that the constitutionality of the holy resolution, quote, is not clear, unquote. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, though, said during the press conference on Thursday she'll send the impeachment articles to the Senate when she is, quote, ready, unquote, but added she still has not received guarantees they will receive a fair hearing. This has been Pelosi's essential position since the articles passed the House last month. So there were other statements, other comments. Okay, I'm not going to go through, but anyway, Pelosi thinks that she could send the impeachment articles to the Senate as soon as Friday. Well, there's been no news today that she has sent them, at least not so far. I haven't really read anything. I haven't checked out to see if there's been any news in the last hour or so that she sent the articles. Let's see. Nope, no news on that yet. She has not sent the articles out as yet. So, okay, the Republicans were gearing up for the relentless pace of an impeachment trial to start on Monday or Tuesday. I don't really think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen before the week after this coming week, okay, at the earliest. But I continue to think that it should not happen. I continue to think that what Nancy Pelosi ought to do is to simply say she will send them when she is ready. If the Republicans pass their 25-day rule, then I think, well, actually, whether or not they pass their silly 25-day rule in the Senate, I think what Nancy Pelosi should do is to immediately have a vote to impeach Trump, okay, on grounds of what he just did in Iran. And I'll talk about that, okay, a little later because there's been an article by Ralph Nader speaking to that particular question, but I've spoken to it actually myself in a live stream I did on Thursday night. I pointed out that it was unconstitutional, his acts, that they were in violation, okay, of international law. They were deprivation, okay, of the human rights of Soleimani. They were a violation of the sovereignty of Iraq. I mean, they were just awful, okay, on every ground and certainly constituted war crimes. The murder, okay, of Soleimani was a war crime. The assassination was a war crime. But we'll talk about that, okay, a little later too. The basic point here, though, is that if Nancy Pelosi then holds a vote on that and adds another 2 or 3 articles, okay, arising from the Iran situation, and then sends over all 5 articles, okay, at once, I don't think the 25-day rule would then apply. Okay, but if no one wished to test it, if Nancy Pelosi did not wish to test it, what she would have to do would be to change a few words in the first two articles, okay, of impeachment. Not very hard to do, okay, at all. And then send the five articles of impeachment over after she had a broadened bill of impeachment ready. That might take another couple, 3 weeks, but so what? It would be a lot stronger indictment, okay, of Trump if that were to happen. So that's what I think that she should do. But also, let us keep in mind that the whole position of the administration now, which has been under development actually today, is that Trump killed Soleimani because there was an imminent threat. But it seems that the imminent threat Trump was talking about was the imminent threat of his impeachment. Or I should say his conviction. He's been impeached already, but to be precise, it should be the imminent threat of his impeachment that we're talking about here. There's been a report that Trump privately admitted that he ordered the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani to appease Republican senators who were crucial allies in his upcoming impeachment trial. The Wall Street Journal reported on Friday that following the drone strike on Soleimani last week, Trump told unspecified associates, quote, okay, this is a quote from Common Dreams and an article by Jake Johnson, quote, he was under pressure to deal with General Soleimani from GOP senators he views as important supporters in his coming impeachment trial in the Senate, unquote. So it's not clear who the senators are Trump was trying to satisfy, but the story does cite, the Wall Street Journal story does cite Senators Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, and Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, as proponents of the Soleimani strike. Anyway, Senators Warren and Sanders seized on the reporting as evidence that the president nearly sparked another devastating Middle East war to advance his own political agenda, another impeachable offense. Warren tweeted, today's reporting confirms what I said on Sunday. Why did this strike happen on the eve of the impeachment trial? Trump is taking us to the edge of war for his own political benefit. It's reckless and dangerous. We must speak out, no war with Iran. And Sanders warned, once again we have a president pushing us to the edge of war based on false claims. So these charges are starting to fly and are starting to circulate now. The report from the Journal comes as the Trump administration is facing scrutiny over its justification for assassinating Soleimani. Secretary of State Pompeo admitted during a Fox News interview Thursday night that the administration doesn't know when or where the supposed imminent attacks were going to take place. And Sanders' foreign policy advisor, Matt Duss, tweeted, quote, the imminent threat, quote unquote, was impeachment, unquote. So there we have that. The story is coming out that the imminent threat was impeachment. In other words, there was no imminent threat from Soleimani at all. There is no evidence of any imminent threat. Now, lately, Trump has gone on Fox News and was interviewed by Laura Ingraham. Both, of course, both Trump and Ingraham are paragons of honesty, aren't they? And what Trump said there is he said there was going to be an attack on the American embassy. I guess he was referring to the American embassy, in Iraq. Then he later modified his statement and said there was going to be an attack on 4 American embassies. By the way, if there was an attack on 4 American embassies, those are not necessarily terrorist attacks. They might be severe attacks, and they might be acts of war, but the first act of war was taken by Trump himself. By Trump himself when he murdered Soleimani. That was an act of war. If the Iranians choose to reply with attacks on our embassies, well, that's retaliation in the course of a war, isn't it? It's not a terrorist attack. It's retaliation in the course of a war. That's what it basically is. There is no evidence that any of us have seen from the administration, no evidence at all from the administration, that there were imminent attacks, terrorist or otherwise, being planned by Soleimani against the Americans. Now, the administration has said, through Mike Pence, of course, well, we cannot tell you what the evidence is, because if we told you, we would have to kill you. Just joking, about that last. He didn't say that. He said we would have to reveal our sources and our methods. Duh. Look, anybody can say such a thing, at any time. That doesn't tell us whether they're lying or not. And as I said last night, we have to presume, given that this administration has already told 15,000 lies, 15,000 plus lies, since the start of the administration, that they're likely lying about the whole thing, that they've made it all up. Michael Moore came out with a statement that I saw in reader-supported news this morning, charging that the administration made it all up, going over the record of lies of American administrations over so many years, and pointing to Trump's 15,000 plus lies, but especially lies in relation to our relationship with Iraq over a very long period of time. Our government has told nothing but lies when it came to Iraq. So, given the strength of the response to what Trump did, he's now trying his best, and his administration is trying its best to justify his actions by saying that he moved to prevent an imminent attack, and therefore he was within his rights because the president has the right to respond to imminent attacks. But he's unwilling to present any evidence that there were imminent attacks. And we cannot simply trust what he has to say. So what I say is we have to impeach him because he's not presenting any evidence. If he wants to present evidence in public that can be verified, then there's no case for conviction. There's no case for conviction. But we're not taking any baloney sausage We're not taking any baloney sausages. Oh, we would have to reveal our sources and our methods. All you'd have to reveal is the evidence, not necessarily sources or methods. Redact the sources, redact the methods. Let's see what you can do. Let's see you tell even a coherent story about this. Right now, all you're putting forward is bologna sausage. That's it, and that's all. And then there was a piece from Ralph Nader today. And Ralph, who's of course been working for expanded articles of impeachment for some time. Oh, by the way, I quoted him uh, as being the author of an article proposing about 12 grounds of impeachment. He did write, okay, an article with Bruce Fine, okay, and somebody else that actually proposed, okay, a lot of articles for impeachment. And when I said I covered that, okay, in a live stream, I was incorrect. What I covered in the live stream was actually an article by Chris Hedges, which was borrowing liberally from the Nader Bruce Fine treatment, okay, of impeachment. But anyway, what Nader did is he points out that Trump is the most impeachable president in American history, that he continues to tread our Constitution and its critical separation, okay, of powers. And he says about Trump, unlike Nixon, who slinked away because of the Watergate scandal, every day Trump is providing more evidence to the Congress about his impeachability. He never stops. He never expresses remorse or apologizes for violating the Constitution or federal criminal statutes, such as the Anti-Deficiency Act. Likewise, Trump has shown no respect for international treaties to which the U.S. is a solemn signatory. If I recall correctly, the Anti-Deficiency Act is the act that is there to stop the presidents of the United States from not enforcing the laws. It is there to ensure faithful execution of the laws under the Constitution by the executive. So Nader says, likewise, Trump has shown no respect for international treaties to which the U.S. is a solemn signatory. And of course, we've seen that also in the attack on Soleimani. That violated international laws and treaties, okay, and agreements. And so Nader goes through the various grounds to impeach Trump. In brief, he summarizes those. I'm not going to go through them again. The article by he and Bruce Fine was actually a letter that was written by Nader and constitutional law experts Bruce Fine and Louis Fisher. And that was placed in the Congressional Record on December 18th of 2019, page H12197. Nader, in the present article that appeared this morning, called for Speaker Pelosi to add some of these impeachable offenses backed by constitutional law specialists. And he said if she doesn't do so, that Trump is going to say that even though she had the votes to do so, she didn't because these are fake and these are lies. And Nader points out that exonerating him will prove to be a devastating precedent for future presidents behaving similarly. as the standards for presidential behavior keep dropping lower and lower into lawless immunity and impunity. And I think Nader is right here to point out the moral hazard. Nancy Pelosi keeps ignoring the moral hazard. She's a short run pragmatist who never worries about the moral hazard if she doesn't do certain things. She wants to brush everything under the rug and get on with the business of defeating Trump in a political contest and defeating him in such a way that she doesn't have to piss off any of her donors. Anyway, a Fox News commentator, former Judge Andrew Napolitano, has said if he were the Democrats, he would reopen the impeachment case on the basis of new evidence. And Napolitano points out that would justify Nancy Pelosi holding on to the articles of impeachment and not actually delivering them from the Senate. The articles of impeachment cover abuse of power and contempt of Congress. And her reasoning would be I'm withholding them because there's new evidence and probably or perhaps there are new articles. And Nader says Pelosi can strengthen her hand constitutionally by enlarging the impeachment case against Trump. This move would give millions of Americans a stake in impeachment because it would directly relate to protections and services they lost because of lawless Trump. And it would also directly relate, if I might add, to the danger Trump has put all of us in relation to the war with Iran, which could easily widen into a war among the great powers. Nader follows by saying, in addition, more articles of impeachment would make the Senate Republicans, led by Mitch McConnell, far less able to hold a hasty kangaroo court trial without any witnesses, he might have added, or documents. I completely agree with this. He can hold a hasty kangaroo court trial now because everything is about the Ukraine incident. And everything is about Trump's ability to say, oh, well, Joe Biden was doing the same thing. Joe Biden was doing the same thing. That is what is feeding Mitch McConnell's ability to create a kangaroo court trial. That's what is allowing him to say in public, I'm going to coordinate with the administration. And I'm not impartial in this. I'm not unbiased in this. Mitch McConnell is a juror, and he has to take an oath. He has to take an oath that he will be unbiased in this trial. Fine Fisher and I have written Speaker Pelosi and Senator McConnell urging that the trial's procedures should be established by Chief Justice John Roberts, subject to a Senate majority repeal to assure not only fairness but the perception, of fairness. And they link to a letter. By the way, I've been quoting from an article that appeared in Truthdig by Ralph Nader. I guess it also appeared in Common Dreams, but I didn't pick it up from Common Dreams. And it's dated January 9th, 2020, so that was yesterday, rather than this morning as I previously indicated. So, So Nader points out there's too much bias, prejudgment, and conflict to avoid a farce. And then he asks, when will the American Bar Association, with over 194,000 lawyer members, insist on constitutional observance and the rule of law? When will all those original members of Trump's cabinet, whom he fired in favor of yes men, stand up patriotically for America? When will Colin Powell, George Shultz, and other leading figures from past administrations stand tall and speak out? These are all good questions. When will former President Barack Obama stand up to Donald Trump? Question mark. Yeah, when will he? All of these people are privately worried sick over what Trump is doing and will do to our country. These are various dangerous quote, these are very dangerous times for our republic, its democratic processes and our freedoms. Trump is going to, quote, wave the flag, unquote, and try to intimidate and bully his opponents in the citizenry. And Nader ends with, don't fall for it, America. I like that. Don't fall for it, America. We shouldn't fall for it. We need to widen the articles of impeachment. We need to hold them back until McConnell agrees to rules providing for a fair trial and an unbiased trial in the Senate. And what Nancy Pelosi ought to do, in my view, is to release another article of impeachment each week. Have a vote on impeachment each week. Pile on the articles, one per week, until the weight of those articles is so heavy that it will be impossible for Mitch McConnell to deny the necessity of a trial with witnesses and documentation in the Senate. And while that goes on, it will be perfectly possible for Bernie Sanders and the others to continue to carry on the campaign against Trump. And don't think that numerous articles piled on about impeachment week after week after week will not continuously weaken Trump. They will, because these articles, the ones to come that Nancy Pelosi has avoided so far, are articles that will be much more impactful on public opinion. It will be impossible to deny afterwards that Trump is a crook and a racketeer and totally corrupt, that he's violated the domestic emoluments clause and the foreign emoluments clause, that he's violated laws in various ways. People need to know that. He needs to be dragged through it. He needs to be dragged through the mud, if necessary, for months and months. It will weaken him. And when he attacks Bernie Sanders, the charges will have less and less impact because he will have less and less credibility, because it will become more and more apparent that he lies all the time and that his lies are harmful, that they're damaging, that they're destroying the republic as well as our democracy. Well, that's me for tonight. So, if you like this, please remember, please share, like, and subscribe, and please become a patron at www.patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. And now let me see what you're thinking tonight. Let me look at what you have to say. Oops. Please share this. I think it's important people see it. Okay, let me get to the beginning of the comments and then go through them as is my custom. Well, my daughter Devora is here. I see Dale Weaver is here. Okay, I think I'm about ready to go through the comments. Did I switch back? Let me check. Yes, I did switch back. It's simply delayed. Okay. I guess I'm on the screen now. Okay, as soon as I can grab control of my cursor, I will start to go through your comments. Cheyenne says, I've known Bernie and Jane for decades in Vermont. Bernie can take care of himself. I know he can. I know he can. He had good training when he was growing up. Steve says, new poll in Iowa has Bernie winning. Yeah, I know. Steve says, I keep freezing up. It's probably me who's freezing up. Kay says, I have my doubts if Trump will even participate in any debates. I have my doubts too, but he may be forced to. And Joy Brower Peters, I'm not a Hillary bot, but I'm voting for whoever is the nominee. I like Bernie, and I will vote for him if he is the nominee. Susan Eldridge has joined. Lana Dell has joined. And Steve says Bernie's rallies are no joke either. I know they're no joke. They're great rallies. They're great rallies, and they're huge. Kay says, I know you aren't. Wasn't meaning you. I have others on my Facebook list who are, though. Glad to see you here, Joy Brower Peters. Yes, welcome, Joy Brower Peters. Nice to see you here. Susan Eldridge says, we need to get people to vote for Bernie in the primary. He will decimate Trump in the general. I believe he will, too. I don't think Trump has a chance. I think Bernie will beat him by 20 points. Cheyenne says, good analysis, Joe. Thank you, Cheyenne. Kay says, Bernie goes to where people are and talks to them and listens to them. None of the others do that. Well, Warren's been trying to do that. And Susan says, do you have the link for this? And Joy Brower Peter says, Beto used to laugh out loud. Yeah, he used to. He used to get up on the tables and he used to spread his wings. Yes, he did. But he was incoherent. Steve says, the whole world wants Bernie. And Cheyenne says, I think now this shared it. Oh, great. And Dale Weaver said, good evening, all. Steve says, I'm going to plug this show on Tim Black tonight. Thank you, Steve. Gary Houck has joined. Kay says, Pelosi isn't going to do any more than she's already done. She didn't want to do that much. Look, she bowed to pressure before. She can bow to pressure again. It depends on the kind of pressure we put on the Congress people. Cheyenne says Warren, and she's sort of, okay, I guess those are laughs, right? What a laugh, right? Warren's been falling in the polls, seriously falling in the polls now. Cheyenne says, Trump can be king of his kindergarten class. I'm okay with that. I'm not, Cheyenne. Trump is a terrible bully and would bring terrible values to the kindergarten class. Byron has joined. Hi, Byron Montgomery. Steve DeVore says, "What's sad is I never expected them to be honest about anything they told us about the war. Something seemed wrong from the start." Yeah, it always seems wrong with what they tell us. Cheyenne says, "Donate to Shahed Buttar, Pelosi opponent. Absolutely donate to Shahed. He's an awesome candidate. He's one of the awesome candidates we have this year. We need to get another 20 real progressives into the Congress this time around. At least another 20. In addition to the roughly 10 to 15 that we have now. We need a bloc strong enough to really begin to swing the caucus in coalition with the president. If we have a president who's a real progressive and we have 50 people in the Congress that will go out on a limb pushing for the president to go even further left, the rest of the Democratic caucus can be brought around. We can begin to duplicate then the New Deal Congresses, the kind of Congresses that Roosevelt had. That's what we need to do. So Shahed Buttar is one guy who needs to get elected. And Cenk Uygur also needs to be elected. He'll support the things that need to be supported, like the Green New Deal, okay, and Medicare for all. Okay, I don't agree with Juncker on everything, but I think he can be counted on to support Bernie's agenda. Okay, and there are lots of other people. Kara Eastman, of course, is running again. She's got to be supported. But Charles Booker in Kentucky, who just entered the race and is running against the establishment candidate, Amy McGrath, who's a terrible candidate. Terrible, terrible candidate. Charles Booker can beat McConnell if we go after that. He can beat McConnell. He can get rid of him. He's a good candidate. And Shahed, yes, Shahed must be supported. Steve says, "Jinx, Cheyenne, laugh out loud." Nobody's a jinx here, Steve. We're not a jinx. We're not jinx. Steve says, "It's true enough. Biden did the same thing. Gag me with a spoon." Yeah. Yeah. I don't know whether Biden did the same thing or not. I'm not making that particular judgment. All I'm saying is that it's a credible charge to throw at Biden, to put him on the defensive in the campaign, and to serve as something that Trump can hang his various jibes against Biden on. It will be a terrible distraction from the issues in the campaign. Trump will play it for all it's worth. That charge, the capability of Trump to deliver that charge against Joe Biden, ought to disqualify him as a candidate. These are the days when people are calling for corruption to end all across the country, with candidates running against corruption and money in politics are gaining more and more all across the country. How can the Democratic Party even think of nominating someone who looks like he may be corrupt, or that his family may have done some corrupt things? To have taken a job from a Ukraine company when you had no competence in the area, no background to serve well, for 50,000 a month, 600,000 a year. I mean, obviously, if Biden wasn't, Biden's son was certainly peddling influence by doing that. I mean, that's so obvious to anybody. Kay says, I would love to see Biden be subpoenaed, and his kid too. I think they are corrupt too. As I said, I'm not delivering any judgments on that. I'm just saying, Trump can use it. It will make Biden an unelectable candidate. In the end, he will be an unelectable candidate. We can't have that. I mean, Bernie can easily get by the socialism charge. He's been getting by the socialism charge for decades now. He knows how to answer it. He says, yeah, I'm a democratic socialist. This is what I'm for. Do you agree with these things or not? And he's got the polls on his side. Everybody agrees with those things. What's the difference what he calls it? I mean, a rose by any other name is still a rose. You can call it democratic socialism. You can call it Green New Dealism. You can call it any goddamn thing you want. And the majority is for it. If Trump doesn't like it, screw him. So Cheyenne says, I mean Obama. Steve says, at this point, I think Nancy is causing more harm than good by not bringing more charges against Trump. He's dangerous, and she's not picking up the signals he's sending out. She must know he's dangerous by now. I mean, you don't have to have any signals he's sending out. I mean, the attack on Soleimani, the assassination, was dangerous. It was terribly dangerous. Trump was lucky the Iranians showed restraint. When it comes to international relations, they are a cautious and clever but conservative regime. Sure, they're using proxies. Sure, they're trying to overthrow other states. Well, guess what? The Soviet Union was doing that too for a long, long, long time. So what? That's just international politics. Sometimes that is international politics. That's all there is to it. It's not terrorism. It's not anything that unusual, okay, or reprehensible. When you don't have an advantage when it comes to military armaments, you use other strategies and tactics that can make you effective. What do you expect from a nation that is an underdog? Kay says, Obama was a corporate ass too. Oh, yes, he was. Big time, big time. Steve says, tell it, Doc. And Cheyenne says, read Trump, read the preamble to the Constitution. Cheyenne says, thanks, Joe. And Steve says, watching from beautiful Echo Park, Los Angeles. And Cheyenne says, sorry for having such a big mouth via politics. That's okay, Cheyenne. We like people with big mouths around here. Maybe we should change the the name of this show from the In-Depth Show to the Big Mouth Show. Wouldn't that be great? Somebody says, you're good, Cheyenne. Kay says, I followed Beto when he was running against Cruz. Sure wish he would have won then. Me too. And Philip Marlowe says, Beto was not a progressive. Seema Hernandez was and is. And I think Seema's still running, isn't she? She's running for the Senate again. And there's another candidate that it would be wonderful to elect. Seema is a wonderful candidate. And Jessica Cisneros is a wonderful candidate. She's running against Cuellar, that guy Cuellar. Forget his first name right now. Now, Seema is a terrific candidate. I interviewed her last time around. People found out that Beto was supporting the Zionists and many other things. He did nothing for actual citizens in Texas. He just showed up in time to get in the news whenever there was an opportunity. He is a neoliberal. Phil, I could not agree with you more, but it still would have been good if he had beaten Ted Cruz. Giant says, Joe, you don't get my sarcasm via kindergarten, I guess. Okay. Sometimes I miss sarcasm. I'm such a serious person that I keep missing the sarcasm. I keep missing the snark. Kay says, have loved Junk for years. Loved his old show on MSNBC years ago. Yeah, I liked it too. For the time, it was an outstanding show. Steve says, Angelica Duenas needs to be elected. She's a great candidate too. I interviewed her too last time around, Steve. I thought she was really a great candidate. Phil says, can be counted on to support Bernie. Did you miss his coverage in 2016? No, I did not miss his coverage in 2016, but he can be counted on to support Bernie now. He's made a big bet on Bernie. He's running as a Bernie Democrat. He's running as a Bernie Democrat. As long as the establishment is trying to do him in, which they are, he's going to be for his ally in getting rid of the establishment, and that ally is Bernie Sanders. Kay points out he already endorsed Bernie in all his policies. Kay says Cenk will kick up the dust in Congress. I believe that. Steve says I'll probably be canvassing for Bernie tomorrow, perhaps with the Metro Squad or in East LA. Got to keep the momentum going. Right, Steve. And Steve says Junk isn't my favorite, but he'll do. But he's the best who's running in that district, isn't he, Steve? There isn't a better candidate in the California 25th than Cenk, from our point of view. Cheyenne says, right, Joe, international politics. Yeah. When it comes to international politics, the only strong candidates are Bernie, okay, and Tulsi. And I don't think Tulsi is as anti-war, okay, as Bernie is. Not really. She's anti-regime change wars. That is true, and she's very firm on that. And she's very intelligent in her outlook and very intelligent in her analyses of the power politics involved in different situations. She would certainly be a much better president in the area of international politics than anybody else, okay, who is running today. But I think the exception here is Bernie Sanders. I think you'll see when he becomes the president that he'll be better. And Cheyenne is laughing out loud. She says, love Seema. And Russ says, the Big Mouth Show. Well, that's the Big Lip Show. Russ, that's not the Big Mouth Show. We need something like I know. Heather Digby Parton on her website. As a blogger, she was very famous. Okay, around 2005, 2010, and still retains a great deal of fame in the blogosphere. When she was blogging as Digby, but she had a website which, as its icon, contained an image of the English actor. I forget his name, but from the movie, in which he shouted out through the window, "I'm mad as hell, and I won't take it anymore." That should probably be the icon for this show, or something very similar to it. Anyway, we need an icon like that. The Big Mouth Show is a good one. So it's properly disrespectful. Steve says Paula Jean in West Virginia is a wonderful candidate. Yeah, I agree. Paula Jean is. See, before we're through with this show tonight, we're going to name all the great candidates in the country. How about this guy, Doug Collins, in Washington, who's running against Denny Heck this year? He seems like a pretty great one, too. I don't know what chance he has in the primary, but it seems like he's a pretty great guy, too, and a Bernie Democrat. Cheyenne Terra says, my Balinese friend says big mouths for peace. Not bad, big mouths for peace. And Philip Marlowe says Junk endorsed Bernie and then turned on him and supported HRC with a vengeance. I noticed that. Okay, I noticed that. But I don't think Junk is going to do the same thing when the alternative is Joe Biden. But we'll see. We'll have to see. Junk did turn on Bernie. I don't think he's going to turn on him this time, though. And part of the reason why is that there's a good chance that 2 months from now, Bernie Sanders is going to have a lock. 2 months from now, that he's going to be close to having a lock on the nomination of the Democratic Party. Maybe 3 months from now. Maybe 2 months from now is too optimistic. Lana says, we need a list of the progressive candidates and start contributions to them, even if just about $5. We do need such a list. Sooner or later, I'll develop such a list myself. Any other comments or questions? Rick has joined. Hey, Rick, have you got a list of all the progressive candidates who are running in the primaries in the country? Have you got such a list? Now, we decided we need a list of those candidates. Oh, I'm getting a lot of hearts for that. Okay, any more comments or questions or statements or suggestions for new names? Okay, I'll give you a minute. And if there are no additions, I will say good night until tomorrow night. Oh, Rick says he's getting it. Oh, well. Oh, does that mean you've got it handy, Rick? Steve says, good show, Doc. Thanks, Steve. Maybe we should wait a minute until Rick gets it. And Lana says, not sure if it's complete, though. Okay, well, the point is, we start with a list, Lana. If someone has already got a list, we'll start with that list. Then we'll critique, we'll check on it, okay, we'll revise the list, and then we'll come up with the best list we can come up with. And then we'll keep it current. And that'll work, right? We ought to be able. Oh, Rick says it's already posted. Have you got the link, Rick? Have you got the link? We can probably develop a list fairly easily. First, from the Justice Democrats list. Then we can look to the brand new Congress list. It's probably a brand new Congress list, right? Steve says good night, all. Steve says good night, Kay. Good night, Kay. Cheyenne says thanks, everyone. There's a new comment. About Fadl Kaboub has a list of brand new Congress candidates that he talked to about MMT. Well, we'll certainly take a look okay, at that list. Jen Perlman loves MMT. Cheyenne says bye. And Rick has given us a link to Act Blue. Yeah, Richard Dean Winfield is running for a Senate seat to challenge Perdue this year. Yes, I know he is. He and I have been in contact, and he asked me if I'd like to have him on the show. And I told him, yes, I would like to have him on the show, but I also told him about the relatively small audience we have now. So he would be free to choose whether he wants to come on the show or not. But I indicated to him the times, okay, I was available. And if he wants to take his time to come on the show, okay, I'd love to have him. I thought he was a great candidate. In 2018, I had him on the show 3 times. I supported him rather strongly. And I'd love to have him on the show again. In fact, before too long, I'm sure I'll be interviewing certain candidates again, though not as much as I did in 2018, because there's just so much to cover this year. Steve says, very astute people here. That's the brand new Congress list. Via Act, Paint the Ballot Blue 2020 and beyond. Yeah, I'm sure that's a pretty good list. And so, as I was saying to Lana, I think the strategy here should be we'll look over the various lists and consolidate them, and we'll check them all out, and then we should come up with a list of our own, probably. I wouldn't mind that, okay, at all. And Lana says, I was replying to Kay for the Bernie Kratz page. I will take a look. Okay, Dolores says, good night. She says, thank you and good night. And Steve says, good night, all. And I have 4 new comments, one of which is Rick's link. And Steve says, we're not that many, but we could share him out. Yes, we could. We could share him out. And Russ says, Richard called me during the holiday. I've got to call him back. Yeah, he's trying to assemble his campaign now. And Rick says, darn, that's the wrong one. That's AOC. Well, I'm sure AOC has a pretty good list. Russ says, I got to call in an evening too. See you soon. Okay, good night, Russ. Hope to see you tomorrow night. Susan says, we have a local candidate running for state rep who's a big supporter of MMT. Does anybody have a take on Sarah Gideon, who's running for the Senate against Susan Collins? Uh, I looked her up, okay, a while ago. She looked like she had some leanings towards the progressive side, but that she had a long way to go. Of course, she was much preferable to Susan Collins. No question about that. But we really don't need to have another establishment Democrat. Somewhere, Susan Elder says Betsy Sweet is better. Bernie supporter. Okay, good to know. I will look her up. Lana says, no, not familiar with Collins, a primary candidate. Okay, I will look that up and tie that down. As I say, he's running in, I think it's the Washington 10th, which is the district that's represented by Denny Heck, okay, right now. Susan said, you should interview Betsy Sweet. Okay, Susan, I'll consider that. As soon as things calm down a bit. I will consider interviewing Betsy Sweet. Is she running for state rep? Rick says night all. Night, Rick. Susan says Betsy Sweet is better. Bernie supporter. You should interview Betsy Sweet. She says Sweet is running against Collins. Is this in the Washington 10th, Susan? Steve says Paula Jean is my favorite. I donated twice for the West Virginia Senate. Yeah, I think Paula Jean is pretty great too. And Bernie thinks she's pretty great. So Susan Eldridge says for the Senate in Maine. Yeah. Collins is running in the Washington 10th. Oh, I see. Sweet is running against Susan Collins. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. We were talking about Doug Collins, who's running in the Washington 10th congressional district against Denny Heck. He's not running for the Senate there. Sorry, two Collinses. Common name. Common name. Okay, I'm going to say good night. I'll see you tomorrow.